today I'm going to show you what steps you're going to need if you want to learn to crochet. So I've got my yarn here, the end of the yarn facing towards me, and the first thing that you need to do is create a slip knot so that you can start your chain stitches, which we'll move on to next. So the slip knot, as I say, yarn tail towards you or towards me, and we're just going to hold it across our palm like that, across our fingers, and we're going to go around our two fingers, around again, forming a bit of a cross there, and you're going to go with your hook underneath that first yarn, that first strand of yarn, or fingers and thumbs today, and then over the other strand, and you're going to grab it. I don't know how well you can see that. You're going to grab it with the end of your hook and pull it through that first one, and then you just turn your hand, turn your hook and release, and you've got a hold of both strands of the yarn, and you're going to pull it so that you get your slip knot. And this is what we're going to start working into. So yarn tail, hide that away so that you're not working into that by mistake, and we're going to start creating chain stitches. So I tend to just hold the yarn, the working yarn, across my palm, in between my index and middle finger, and then I kind of pick it up with my index finger, I think. Do you know what? It's so natural, I don't even know what I do anymore, but you'll find that you will have a way once you get going to keep your tension, and I guess I just do what feels natural. There's lots of different ways. You can find lots of different tutorials on YouTube that will show you how you can hold your yarn. As I say, this is how I do it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start creating our chain stitches, which will form our foundation row. So you don't need to have a set multiple. It doesn't have to be like, oh, 3 stitches to create 1 stitch or anything like that. You just need to start by chaining the stitches you need to create the project you're working on. So I'm just going to go ahead and create 10 plus 1. So you'll always want a plus 1 on the end, and that becomes your turning chain. Again, we'll look at that in more detail afterwards. So creating chain stitches, we're going to go under this working yarn, and say hold that end out of the way, underneath, grab it around our hook like so, and then we're going to go and pull that through that slip knot that we created, and that's our first chain. And we're going to continue doing that all the way to create our 11. So that's 1. Again, under that working yarn, grab it with the end of your hook and pull it through, and we just keep repeating that. So we've grabbed that working yarn and we're going to pull it through. Same again. Now there's different ways again you can do this. You can either go under like that, or sometimes I'll just flick the yarn over my hook, but it's essentially creating that same movement. And then again, we just pull that through each chain that's on our hook each time. We just keep repeating that step. So yarn over or yarn under. No, it's definitely yarn over, hook under. And we just keep pulling that through until we've got the stitches we need. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. Okay. So what we're going to do with this 11th chain, this is going to become our turning chain. And with our foundation row, what we do is we work into the back of those chains. So you'll see the front, you can see a very definite V to each stitch. When we turn it over, we just get these single bumps that are sticking up. That's what we're going to be working into. So the first one is here. So we're going to take our hook And we're gonna, I tend to use my fingernail actually to almost pull that bump over the end of my hook, like so. And then again, it's yarn under. I should probably tell you what stitch we're going to create, shouldn't I? So we are going to be doing a double crochet, which in the US is called a single crochet. It's the same stitch, just UK and US different terms. So I'll just show you that again. We've gone into the bump on the back of the stitch, like so, and then we're going to go under that working yarn and pull it through the bump. We're then going to go yarn over again and pull through both of those loops on our hook, and that's our first double crochet created. And we're going to work all the way along these bumps doing that same thing. So that was one. I'm going to go into this next one, so you can see the bump is in the middle of the V there, and we're just going to go into that bump, yarn over and pull through that stitch. We're going to go yarn over again, and we're going to pull through the 2 loops that were on our hook. So we just keep repeating this process all the way along until we've got our 10 stitches. So as I explained, although we've created 11 chains, that last chain became our turning chain, which means we actually have 10 stitches to work into. So I'm just going to keep going across through that bump, yarn over, through the bump, yarn over and through the 2 loops on our hook, all the way to the end. And the reason we're working into that back bump is because it will give us a nice crisp edge to our work. And the last one, you can see just there, again yarn over and pull through, yarn over and through both loops on our hook. So you'll notice that by working into that back bump, we've got this really nice V on the edge of our work. It just keeps it nice and neat. So we've got to the end. I'm just going to get myself some more yarn. And what we do next is we create a turning chain. So we chain 1. Remember, a chain is yarn under and pull through the loop on your hook. We then turn our work, and now we're going to be working into these V's that have been created by our single crochet row. So we've done our turning chain. We're now going to work into this first stitch, this first V here. This is the one you've just created by having your turning chain. We're actually going into the first stitch of that previous row. So we're going to go insert our hook into there, and it's yarn over again, pull through, yarn over and through both loops on your hook. So it's exactly the same as we've done in our foundation row. It's just that we're working into both sides of that V. We're not working into a bump anymore because that was purely for our foundation row. So it's still just the same single crochet in US, double crochet in the UK. So in through both loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and through both loops on your hook. Again, I'm just going to do that all the way to the end. Just keep going through. Just to say, the yarn I'm using is an Aran weight yarn, or in the US it's called a worsted weight yarn. I'm not from the US, so I'm probably saying that completely wrong, so I apologise. And I'm using a 5mm hook, just so that it creates nice big stitches that you can see easily. It's also probably a good idea to start with either an Aran weight or a chunky weight yarn when you're first starting out, because it's just easier to see where you're going, to see your stitches. The smaller the project, the smaller the yarn, the smaller the hook, the trickier it is to see the stitches you're working into. It's not like knitting where you've got all your stitches nicely lined across the needle. You can see them quite easily. With crochet, you're only working one stitch at a time, so you've got to go back and find them as you're working along. So I've come to the end of that row, done my turning chain, and we're just going to do the exact same thing. So into that first stitch of the previous row, or you could say it's the last stitch of the previous row, I'm going to yarn over and pull through. We're just going to keep on doing these double crochets along. Now what you're eventually going to end up with is a fabric that looks a bit like this. Here's one I did earlier. And you can see it's quite stretchy, it's quite dense. Yes, you can see through it. You can see my fingers, I think, through there. But it is still quite a dense fabric. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just show you how you would finish off. It's not like binding off in knitting. It's actually a lot easier, in my opinion. So we've finished a row here. I'm just going to do a turning chain, and we would just work that last row the same as we've worked all the others. So just going across with our double crochet into each V-stitch. Hopefully you can see that quite clearly. And we're just continuing all the way along until we get to that last stitch, like so. Okay, so this is the last stitch, and we'll work that in exactly the same way in that we've done into our V, yarn over. In fact, I'll just show you through the V, yarn over and pull through, yarn over, and at this point you're going to want to cut your yarn. So give yourself a nice reasonable amount length of yarn to work with for sewing in your ends, and you're just going to pull that through, and then you're going to create a slip stitch on the very end, like so. So a slip stitch is very similar to a chain stitch. You are just simply pulling it through like that. I'll show you that again. So you've completed your last stitch of your row, and you're just going to pull that yarn through, but you're going to come all the way through. You're going to pull that whole yarn tail through, and you're just going to tighten that off. And that's how easy it is to finish off your last row. Not as tricky, I think, not as tricky as when you're binding off with knitting and you've got to do each stitch individually. That's the nice thing about crochet, is that it is really easy to just finish off your project. So that's hopefully helped you to start your crochet journey. There's lots of different hooks you can buy. I prefer this style myself. You can buy just a plain aluminium one, which I've probably got over here. There we go. Look a bit like that. So you've got the little thumb mark there, in the same as you have here. But I just find these easier to hold personally and easier to work with. You can get nice pretty ones, all sorts. But if you're just starting out, as I say, get yourself a good size hook, nice thick yarn to work with. You'll find that really helps with the learning process. Also something that if you need to unravel it a few times isn't going to split and go horrible on you, because you will make mistakes when you're first learning. We all do. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that little video. If so, please hit like and subscribe below.